Hi, I'm Hannah Cruz at the Church Musician's Assistant. Welcome back to Lesson 3 in this series on how to adapt organ hymns to the piano keyboard. In this lesson, I want to talk about simplifying harmonies and filling them out so that they are very supportive for congregational singing and easier on the pianist. First of all, if you're new to playing hymns on the piano, or even if you do this all the time, I recommend thinking more vertically than horizontally. By vertically, I mean think more chordally in terms of stacked harmonies rather than in terms of counter melodies, polyphony. Many wonderful hymns are written with polyphonic lines where each of the SATB parts are very individualistic. For example, with the hymn Aberystwyth, each vocal part has a unique melodic quality to it. For example, the alto sounds like this. The bass has a nice melodic line as well. But sometimes on the piano, playing all of these four parts is tricky. And so I recommend thinking chordally. The first measure really is just E minor. So you can play the melody over an E minor chord, and that will suffice. And then the next measure is basically a B chord followed by an E minor chord. And you can simplify the chords like that throughout the hymn. Look at the big beats. In 4/4, the big beats would be 1 and 3. In 3/4, that's going to be the downbeat of each measure. And, in a time signature like 6/8 or something, the emphasis is going to be on 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It'll be on 1 and 4. Look to these big beats to figure out the simpler harmonic trajectory of the hymn. When you're piecing together the harmonic progression of the hymn, you can often identify chords based on the root that's in the bass. The bass note is not always the root of the chord, but often it is. And if you look at the other notes stacked on top of the bass note, then you will be able to identify the chord. Always keep the overarching harmonic progression of each phrase in mind as you're playing on the piano. Try not to get bogged down in all of the passing tones and passing chords, especially if those hinder you from playing smoothly or at full tempo. After you have simplified the harmonies, I recommend filling out the harmonies. That means adding more chord tones in the hands. You will probably be doubling up on some chord tones, and on the piano especially, these parallels between voices do not matter. It just adds a thickness to the sound that the congregation really needs to feel supported as they sing. So for example, in the Aberystwyth hymn, we have the first measure of E minor, and the next half measure is B7 followed by E minor again. So rather than just 4 parts, we can fill this out to 6 or more parts. So I will extend my left hand down an octave and add a fifth, up to the soprano melody note. That gives the sound a richness that is not there when you just play the 4 parts written on the page. Not always, but most of the time you will have to expand your range on the keyboard to include more of those chord tones. So like I just demonstrated, I dropped the bass down an octave and added a 5th to give the chord more fullness. You could also extend up higher than the melody. For example, you could play the melody up an octave and fill in all of those chord tones between. Popping the melody up an octave and filling in all the chord tones in between adds a lot of richness, and it can really help highlight the melody by just playing it higher than the congregation is actually singing. That higher tone is going to travel over the congregational singing and ring clear as a bell. Also, you can drop that bass an octave, and adding a 5th above it just gives the bass even more richness. It makes it sound like a 32-foot pedal. So to review, on the piano, you can simplify your harmonies by looking at the big beats and the overall harmonic progression of each phrase. You can fill out those harmonies by adding more chord tones and expanding your range on the keyboard. All of these things add a lot of fullness to the sound and a supportive nature to the congregational singing that people in your congregation are really going to appreciate. Hope you will join me for the next lesson, where I will talk about maintaining tempo and rhythmic integrity. See you soon.